right, did we do it this time? Let me just double check. It said the internet wasn't working, and I just recently got an extender or a booster. So let me just double check that it's actually showing up and it's actually working. All right, it looks like it's working. Cool. So let's talk. Let me share this first. And if you know anybody who's stuck in this cycle, please share it. And you may, of course, you may need to watch it before you share, but please do share it. A common double bind of desire. Awesome. Okay, so this came up last night with a client, and it was really amazing to put it in this context, in these words, because so many of us want something on a really deep level. We want to be who we are and be accepted for that and like feel really good about it. And then on the other deep level, we want to be good and loved. And some of us have set up a little dichotomy between the two. So we want to be good and loved or accepted or whatever, appreciated, and we want to be ourselves and be how we feel like we're best. And what can happen is we can set ourselves up to fail. So this came up last night with a client, and I won't share her example, but let me give you an example. Say, here's a really easy one. I used to do this all the time in yoga, and this is why I want to talk about it, because literally I have dragged myself through the mud on this one. So here's a good example. So say I want to be successful. So say like I want to be successful, but I really secretly deep in my heart don't want to teach yoga. Again, this is just an example. And so then my entire schedule, say that I think yoga is the only thing I can make money at. So I set up my entire schedule to teach yoga, and I have all these classes every week, and I show up to every class being like, nobody's going to come. I'm a terrible teacher. I don't even want to be here, blah, blah, blah. And nobody comes. And we're like, look, there it is. See, nobody comes. I shouldn't be doing this. And what's actually happening is not you're bad at teaching so nobody comes. What's actually happening is deeper down, this deeper desire is that you want to do something else. And so you create the circumstance to see that reflected back to you. So you have all the opportunity, but you don't follow it through, it doesn't work out, and you read the signs as, see, that just proves that I suck at this, or that just proves that I'm not meant to do this, which is secretly validating that deep part of you, hey Janet, that deep part of you that would rather do something else. So let's give another example. And here's where I really want to talk about the concept of a good girl and a bad girl, or a good boy and a bad boy. So most of us have in mind, or I'm going to say something really personal. Like, this is an incredibly personal story to me, and I'll share it. So when my grandmother died, this was the first death that I experienced consciously when I was probably 14, somewhere around there, 14, 15. When my grandmother died, I was away at camp. And that night, and we'd been so worried, so really like, as teens do, we get very dramatic about things. And so I was very dramatic and very worried about the whole thing. And then at camp, we had this big circle, and I said something like, I was having a lot of fun. I was really not thinking about it all. I was just being myself. I was just being ridiculous and playful in the way that kids do at camp, and 14. And that's when my grandmother died. So in my head, I've now attached me having frivolous fun and being very centered on my own joy as being irresponsible and not showing up for this death in my family. Flash forward 15 years to my grandfather dying. I go out to the bar because I'm in my hometown the night before vacation. Go out with all my friends. We drink way too much. Wake up in the middle of the night. My grandfather died. So same thing. I'm having frivolous, selfish fun. Grandfather died. So that's a pattern that obviously on a deeper level I want to look at if I want to allow myself to be joyful. And so I have this desire. I want to let my life be easy. I want to be myself. I want to feel really expansive and joyful. But wait, every time I feel expansive and joyful, there's this fear that I'm not a good girl. Because look, 2 people died when I was being joyful, right? So now we're in conflicting desires. I have the desire to feel how I want to feel and be myself, and I have the desire to be responsible and good to my family, to my friends, to my clients, all of it. So now these 2 desires hit against each other, right? So then anytime I go to recreate a circumstance in which I'm the good girl, I'm showing up for my family, I'm showing up for my clients, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm acting how I'm supposed to act, I'm wearing the clothes I'm supposed to wear for my kind of person, whatever it is, then I can sabotage that, right? Because there's a part of me that's like, this is what I have to do to be a good girl, but I'm not. But I'm this awful person over here who is selfish, or I'm this person over here who's actually a rebel and really radical. And so we butt heads between the deepest desire and intention for ourselves to be who we are and our desire to fit in and receive acceptance and approval. Hopefully this is landing with you. I'm trying to give some examples to point at the issue. One of the metaphors I'm really liking right now is that much of the truth is like looking at a star. And when you look straight at a star, it's hard to see. And as soon as you look slightly to the side, you can see it shining over here. But when you look straight at a star, it's hard to see. And that can be the same idea with some of these deeper concepts. When we try to really wrestle through them mentally and emotionally, we may not be able to get it. But if we sort of kind of get it through stories, okay, I feel the resonance of what you're saying, even though I don't quite get it. So let's try another example. How would we self-validate through failure? So say, let's think of something. So many of us think if you're in business or if you're in professional life, you have to be a certain way in order to be successful. You have to have good time management. Nobody has good time management, by the way. But you have to have good time management. You have to be organized. You have to be altruistic. You have to be emotionally intelligent. You have to be a snappy dresser. You have to be generous with your time. You have to be focused with your time. You have to be a visionary leader. You have to be courageous. You have to be everyman and connect with everybody in your team. There's all of these impressions and imprints we put on ourselves of what it looks like to succeed. And if you're in a business that has a stereotype to it, you're going to add that stereotype onto yourself as well. So the stereotype of an online person like me could be, oh, well, you're just floating around the world on a beach and making millions of dollars, being a talking head, but really you're what's the word? Like a snake oil salesman, right? So you take on those negative and positive stereotypes. The positive stereotype being floating around on the beach, negative stereotype being snake oil salesman. Or in yoga, positive stereotype being somebody who can be really spiritually impactful for people and really change lives. Negative stereotype would be, again, a false guru, somebody who takes money in order to help people. So when we have these roles that we're playing, and we can't go through life without playing roles. I'll do a video on that. Roles are implied. There's a space between who you are and who you feel you are and the role itself. Because you is identified through hundreds and hundreds of thousands of roles and hundreds of thousands of relationships with other people, not just this one role. But if you think to be successful, to be approved, to be loved, you have to play this role perfectly, whether it's a business role, whether it's the role of daughter, whether it's the role of perfect spouse, whether it's the role of perfect parent. If you think you have to jump through some hoops to be accepted, loved, approved, whatever in that role, successful in that role, then there's a good chance that you're going to come to a moment where you screw yourself over. We'll call it sabotage here, but you'll sabotage yourself and make that experience fail. And that's because the deeper part of you believes you're somebody else. Either it believes you're not good, so you can never succeed in that area, or it believes, which is a bit more cheeky, you're not good and you like it that way. Meaning, if to be the perfect mom, I have to be like bake cookies and wear the perfect sweater set and all of that, then that sneaky part of you is not only failing to do that and then beating yourself up over it, but behind the scenes being like, that's because I'm cooler than that, right? So the trouble is, and where we really get into trouble with this, is that tiny little distance between, wow, I'm failing at that, and I kind of want to fail at that, is unspoken. And most of us don't acknowledge the deeper part of you that's actually being very successful at not doing what you don't want to do. So why would we fail at anything? Because we don't want to do it, right? Like 9 times out of 10, we just don't want to do it. And so we manage to create a life around us that makes sure we don't have to do it. Thank you. What an incredible gift. But we interpret it differently, right? We interpret it as I'm the problem, not I'm so amazing that my underlying desire actually is stronger than my belief about what I should do here. And that's what I want to get at here. So we're in this process of conflicting desire. The mind's desire to be good and right and everything you think you should be. And the soul's desire to express itself in the way that feels the most natural and the most fun. Soul's about fun, joy, love, all of that good stuff. And so when we fail to be good, we use that as fodder for why we're bad, instead of considering that perhaps we could be bad, and by being bad, we're good. Does that make sense? Hopefully you're following me. I know this is a little bit of a deep dive. So say that we'll go back to the mom example. Or let's say, the mom example is good. So say to be the perfect parent, you have to bake cookies, you have to dress a certain way, you have to belong to a certain club, all of that. See, parents go through this all the time. And then there's a part of you that just doesn't give a poop about any of that. Like, you just don't care. You do not care. In fact, you'd rather do it the absolute opposite way. You'd rather, like, let your kid roll around in the mud. You'd rather never bake a thing in your life. You'd rather they just learn by, like, building and taking apart cars in the garage. Like, you just don't care about the things that you think make you a good parent. Or a good parent by, social judgment standards. That's what we're talking about. So every time you go to fulfill that, like, look, I baked cookies, it's going to be not enough, right? People didn't appreciate them enough. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody congratulated you. You didn't get a medal for baking the cookies for class. Or, like, look, I bought the car everybody said I was supposed to have. And then you feel dreadful every day driving it, and nobody has, like, acknowledged how well you've done at playing the good role, And so there's this bitterness that grows, this anger, this bitterness. And you feel like, well, what was the point? I tried so hard to do it, and it didn't work. And this can happen in a day, it can happen in a week. In business, a lot of us do this repeatedly every week. Like, I'm going to try, I have all this energy, I'm going to make it work this time. And then we do like one little thing, and it doesn't go as we thought, or it doesn't catch fire right away. And so we slink back and we're like, well, that didn't work. That just proves that I'm not cut out for this because I'm not good enough. There's the word good again. Meaning I'm not like a good enough person, a good enough girl, a good enough model, a good enough like stereotype of what successful is to make this work. So now I'm angry, now I'm bitter, but more than that, now I've proved that I'm special. And not in a bad way, in a really, really powerful way. But why do we have to validate through failure? Like, you are special, you are different, you have unique qualities to bring. And it's your concept of what the role requires that's making you feel like you're bad. It's not you. You're not inherently bad. I don't care what you've done. I really don't. You're not inherently bad. So the idea that we will continually force ourselves into situations that we don't fit just to prove that we don't fit, what a waste of energy. What a waste of time. What a waste of energy. And more than that, you're driving yourself insane. But one tiny, tiny piece of you is being fed in that. and it's the part of you that likes who you are. This whole cycle of, I can't be good, I keep feeling it being good, that means I must be bad. That's your self-esteem, like that's your ego self-concept going in circles. That's, what's the right word for it? I'm so good at losing words. But basically it's like an intellectual trap, right? It's like an emotional trap. Like your mind has created a definition, it's created a second definition, and you're swinging back and forth between them, and that's it's wreaking some havoc on your self-esteem and your self-image. And so you get caught up in that, and you say, I don't have self-esteem. You say, I'm not confident. You say, I'm constantly a failure. You say, I can't because. And, well, every time I try, this happens. But what's really happening is on the other side, that deep, deep part of you who loves who you are is being validated because it didn't have to fit into this mold that you don't like. And when you realize this, when you realize that failure is particularly continual habits of failure, can be self-validating, you free yourself to ask a much more important question, which is, what's so wrong with me? Like, this part of me that I think is bad, that I keep trying to mold into this version of good, what's so wrong with that person? And can we bring that version of the self into the role? Because the role is neutral, right? It's only carrying what we've given it. The stereotypes and concepts and weight that we've given it. So you can bring anything into that role. But you've created this difference between good and bad. The role is good, this is what I need to do to succeed, but I am bad. But you like who you are. Somewhere deep down you like who you are. You can't separate that. You can intellectually self-loathe, but soul can't loathe, right? The soul is pure acceptance. The soul is who you are. So the concept of the soul having a thought about who you are and a judgment about it, like, it doesn't make sense. They're one and the same. So there's such like a cheeky little moment beneath the surface of like, yeah, I'm screwing all of this, but that's because I have this thing over here. I really like this over here. So what do we do to close this gap? Because that's the next important question. How do we stop self-validating through failure? We drop it. Literally, we drop it. We drop the imagined requirements of the role. We drop the idea that I'm bad. Drop it. We drop the idea that I have to be good in order to do X, Y, and Z. Drop it. We just drop it. That's really it. It's like opening your eyes, and I'm just looking at my notes over here. It's like when you can see something clearly, you can never not see it again. You know, if you've ever done one of those like little visual puzzles where it's like, do you see a duck or an old woman or something like that? Like once you've seen them, you can't not see them. And it's the same thing here. Once you see that you've attached being a good person or getting love or finally being accepted with some set of criteria, and then you see that you don't actually want to do that, you don't care about the concept of good in that way, and that doesn't mean that you're bad. That means that everything that you've invested in this concept of good isn't relevant to you. And that's a mental game. And mental games we can puzzle our way out of. And that's what we're doing right here, right? So it may hurt your brain because your brain's unwinding something. It's unwinding a concept here. So first thing, we drop it. You just drop it. Like, drop the idea that to be good, to be successful, to be loved, to be accepted, you have to be different. You don't. Drop the idea that you're not good enough, that you're secretly bad. Because that comes from this self-supporting cycle, right? That you continually create an environment through which you fail to validate who you really are. You don't need that. You don't have to be afraid of who you really are. Nobody's going to judge you anymore. If you're an adult, nobody's judging you anymore, right? You're not a kid anymore. So we can drop that level of hiding that we may have done as a kid, that secret, like hiding under bushes and in your bed and being like, oh, I am this amazing person and nobody understands me. Like, you're an adult, drop it. It doesn't matter if people understand you. What matters is if you express it. And if you want this thing over here, but you tell yourself you can't have it because you're not a good girl or boy, well, you're just validating, this secret version of yourself. Like, bring that self to the fore. Bring it to the fore. Because your true desire is always that little secret, cheeky, happy part, right? So if you keep failing at something over and over, it doesn't mean that you don't want that. It means that you don't care about the what it requires of you, because it doesn't fit you. So that is actually winning, right? That is, thank God, the deeper soul aspect of me keeps creating circumstances that I don't have to deal with. Like, keeps creating circumstances that I don't have to become somebody I'm not. This is cause for celebration, not cause for beating yourself up. This is where, when we get into the concept of what's the interaction and interplay between intention and action and conviction, right? Like, the deepest level of intention can create circumstances in your life that go beyond what you ever imagined. And you didn't even know you had the intention. But the soul always has the intention to express itself. And so you might be creating years, decades of crappy experiences to validate the soul's version of itself if you're not allowing it to be expressed in other ways. AKA, the more you allow yourself to feel comfortable expressing yourself, the better off your life is going to be. And the better it's going to feel, and the better it's going to look, and the more love you're going to have, the more acceptance you're going to have, the more money you're going to have, all of it. That's the power of the mastermind. That's why I lead masterminds, right? We have to practice. We have to practice letting ourselves be comfortable being our own true selves. It's not like necessarily an overnight thing, but I'm suggesting that overnight you just drop the concept of how you have to be good and why you're bad, because that's what's keeping you trapped in this cycle. The second thing that you can do is we've got to bridge the gap. We've got to bridge the gap between bad me and good me. And what that is that's the practice piece, right? That's the, excuse me, I have the hiccups. Is it safe for me to, like, maybe make a little joke the next time I'm with a coworker? Is it safe for me to say something a bit more risque when I'm out with friends? Is it safe for me to take an art class? Is it safe for me to wear something a little funkier? Whatever it is for you, we take these baby steps to make ourselves more comfortable, feeling more expressive. And for you, you may put on this like bold shirt and, accoutrement and walk out of the house being like, I can't believe I'm being so wild and crazy, and nobody might notice. Because most of the time, at the end of the day, what you think has to be shut down just doesn't matter to most people. It's just, as kids, it felt so important. As kids, it felt like when somebody said, stop being so boisterous, you thought it meant you, not your tone, like the loudness of your voice, right? So we take this massive, like, oh my gosh, everything about me is wrong, and we've locked it down, and then you go to let it out, and you're like, oh, nobody even cares. Like, okay, that can be disappointing too, but we've got to bridge the gap. So that's where the baby steps come in. And we just do like one little exciting thing at a time. And this is where, when you hear people talk about following your joy, following your passion, this is what they're talking about. That's like the Hansel and Gretel trail that doesn't lead to being eaten, but leads to, happiness at the end of the day. So we give ourselves these little breadcrumbs. Can I eat something I'd rather eat today? Can I wear something I want to wear today? That kind of stuff. And then the third piece is we've got to release the anger. So when we've created a self-validating through failure cycle, what's happening for many of us is it's attached to this I'm not enough question. So here's the good way I have to be. Here's the bad truth of who I am. And every time I fail at this good thing and come back to this bad thing, that's just proving that people don't understand me. They don't value me. They don't get me. I'm not enough. They don't love me enough. I'm never going to be enough. Like, we have a lot of these enough thoughts in here. Some of that, I would say a lot of that, is based in anger or causes anger. At some point, it doesn't even matter which came first. So we have all this anger. And so then every time we go to do something to prove how good we are, we're actually doing it from like a really bitter, angry place. And then when it doesn't work out, we're even more mad that it didn't work out, because here you are sacrificing the truth of who you are to try to fit into this mold, and it's not working. And how dare it not work? How dare it not work? Doesn't it know what you're giving up to try to fit in that? So that anger that I just gave you a sneak peek of that all of us have, that anger's got to be cleared out. And that anger, you can, what I said to a client last night, like write a list of the 100 ways the world failed you. Write a list of the ways your family didn't love you enough. Write a list of the ways your clients are just, they totally don't get it. And write a list of why all your prospects are idiots. Write a list of why every boss and every person you've ever known just totally isn't enough for you and they've never shown up for you. You know, like get specific, get general, write a list, do something to clear that anger. There's a great clearing practice that I have as well. It's a partner-based practice. I think I've talked about it before. And we've got to clear up that anger so that when we approach bringing ourselves more fully into the roles that we play in life, we're not bringing ourselves in there defensive and bitter. Because then we're still in the self-supporting cycle of failure. So 3 steps is, first we drop it. That's like opening the eyes and you can never see it again. You can never not see it again. So now that we have it, listen to this again. You know, maybe listen to it a couple times to let the psyche, like the deeper mind, understand what we're talking about here. Come up with an example, see it. See it in your life. See how you might have been doing it. So go back to the first few examples I gave that maybe hopefully I don't have any comments because I can't see them if I do. Go back to the first few examples I gave. So things like every time I really truly feel happy and express myself, then something bad happens and so I can't do that. Or to succeed in, let's just say like to succeed as a yoga teacher, I'm just making this up off the top of my head. To succeed as a yoga teacher, I have to be a vegan and be totally spiritual and live in this space of blissed out truth all the time. And every time I show up like that, people are like, oh, you think you're so high and mighty and enlightened? And I'm like, screw you, right? And it comes back to that truth of like, I tried to mold myself to fit your vision of what you needed me to be, which is actually your vision of what you thought you needed to be. And you're not even accepting it. It's still not working. I'm going to go back to the true self. So we created a disconnect between true self and self as the role that we're trying to fulfill. And we think that we have to play a role to get something. Love, affection, success, money, acclaim, support, security, that type of thing. So what are you assuming that you have to be and do to get what you want versus who you actually are? That's the actual disconnect, right? So we have a deep, deep desire to be who we are and a deep, deep desire to have this outcome. And the two are hitting up on each other because we have somehow crossed the wires. Maybe it happened in childhood. We've crossed the wires that who you are can't actually ever get that, can't be that person. Perhaps, and I think one of the biggest ones is because you're not enough or because you're not a good girl or boy. So see that, explore it, see how it's playing out in your life. Then the second step that we talked about, so that's drop it, like see it, drop it. Drop the good girl stuff, drop the good boy stuff, drop the I've got to be this way, and then drop the I'm not enough stuff. Then the second piece is to bridge the gap, so that's that tiny breadcrumbs of the Hansel and Gretel moving forward. And then the third piece, I'm just looking at my notes here, is to release that anger, that bitterness that comes from that cycle. Yeah. That was a deep one. So if you have any comments or any questions, hey Heather, congratulations on your beautiful wedding. It was absolutely stunning. I love the video. If you have any questions about this, let me know. You're welcome to private message me or email me. I'm alexis@alexispearce.com. Post in the comments below. Anywhere that you feel comfortable. This is a really, really big one. Like, one of my clients is, you know, she's got a couple decades behind her, and we're just now getting to this core. But this is the thing that's going to release her, right? It's going to release her to move forward, because the disconnect between I'm bad, but I have to be a good girl, is like, bam, it's constantly hitting up against itself. And so then anytime we try to take action that's good action, we sabotage it and come back to, well, A, that's because I'm bad, but B, I'm secretly happy about that because this is the real me. So we've got to close that gap between the deep, deep desire of self and the desire for the outcome of what we want. and what we think it means. So this is, you know, other coaches will talk about this in the mindset context. Like, you know, you have to write out your beliefs about, like 50 beliefs about what it means to be successful as a ophthalmologist. Like, paint the picture of what an ophthalmologist's life looks like, and then tell me all the reasons that you don't actually want those things. Like, that's a very standard mindset coaching practice, and that would be really applicable here for that first step. But I want you to see the deeper emotional, soul-based reason behind why a practice like that is so powerful. Because you can go through a practice like that all you want and never really get it. And I want to open your eyes so you just get it. You just get it, and you can't go back to sleep. You can't go back to putting yourself in that self-failure cycle and the self-validation through failure cycle, because you now see so clearly that you're setting yourself up for failure as a kind of pat on the back for your true soul self, right? So that's what the goal of this video is just to allow you to just, bam, oh my gosh, I see it. I see why I'm doing it. I see what I get out of it. Tons of exercises that you can use to move forward. We talked about the 3 big steps in general. The dropping it, the awakening, the breadcrumbs, like allow yourself to experience more joy and passion and start to let that deeper soul self come up. And then the releasing the anger. So awesome. Thank you guys for being here. If you have any questions, there's quite a lag, so I probably won't see them. Oh, Heather, you are so welcome. It was absolutely beautiful. I can't wait to see more pictures. So talking to Heather about her wedding. Yeah. Awesome. If you just joined, go back and watch this again. Even if you joined in the beginning, watch it again, because this is like that metaphor of looking at the star. Like, we can't quite get it when we're staring straight at it. So we got to hear this one over and over until we really feel the truth of it and have an example of your own life that flashes up. Like, for me, one of the things that really flashed up was like, oh, of course, because in my head, anytime I'm really relaxed and having a great time and being super joyful, somebody dies. And it's not that I think if I'm happy somebody will die. It's that I've connected being a responsible, good person who's there for her family and there for her life with as against being joyful, because that's selfish. So like, I got to see that, and then I got some work to do to unwrap it. But seeing it helps you just go, right, that's dumb. That means anytime I'm going to be a good person, the part of me that wants to feel joyful is like, screw that. We're gonna, you know, mess that up, because that side of you is contrived, right? It's contrived out of guilt. It's contrived out of belief. It's contrived out of teaching that you picked up from life or from parents or from teachers or from friends, you know, former spouses. Like, so we sabotage it. And then we come back to this part of us that goes, well, that's just proof of why I'm bad, but also I'm happy about that. And we want to like really get in tune with that tiny bit of happiness that's like, yep, that's because deep down, I didn't really want that. I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to be that. I don't want to have to fake it like that. I don't want to have to show up like that. I don't want to have to deal with all that. You know, like, get in touch with that part, because that's the part that's controlling the show. That's the soul beyond the consciousness, right? So that's that deeper intention that's laying the foundation for everything that plays out. And the more you can go back to that, the more you can even acknowledge that it's there, the less it feels like you're trapped in this cycle, and the more it feels like, wow, life is working out pretty well to support your deeper intention. All right, that actually might be the best I said it in the whole video. I needed a warm up, apparently. So listen again if you're just joining. Otherwise, thank you, and I will talk to you soon. Mwah.